100 million by age 31. That is what a friend told me he'd accumulated, and I'm going to go over the 10 secrets to building biblical wealth that I got from him. And before you roll your eyes and think, hey, must be nice, here's what he said next that completely changed how I think about money. The wealthy don't pray for blessings. They position themselves to receive them. So let's jump in. And here's the hidden wealth system. And it's when he opened his Bible, he showed me something that's been hiding in plain sight for thousands of years. A wealth building system so powerful, so counterintuitive that most churches won't even teach it because it makes people uncomfortable. So today, I'm going to show you what Proverbs says about getting rich that directly contradicts everything your youth pastor told you about money. I'm going to reveal why just having faith keeps you broke, and I'm going to explain the one verse about work that, if you actually applied it, would 10x your income in the next 12 months. But first, we need to talk about the little lie that's keeping an entire generation in poverty. The blessed are poor, right? Let's address the elephant in the room here. We've been taught that godly people are supposed to be poor, that money is somehow inherently evil, that if you're wealthy, you must have compromised somewhere. But here's what's interesting. That's not what the Bible actually says. Proverbs 10:4 says, lazy hands make for poverty, but diligent hands bring wealth. Not lucky hands, not privileged hands, diligent hands. And here's the pattern of prosperity. In Proverbs 13:11, it says, dishonest money dwindles away, but whoever gathers money little by little makes it grow. And Proverbs 21:5, the plans of the diligent lead to profit, as surely as haste leads to poverty. Notice something? The Bible doesn't say pray and wait for a miracle. It says work. It says plan. It says gather little by little, which, by the way, is the biblical version of compound interest. Now, here's the misunderstanding that keeps you broke. Somewhere along the way, we twisted the love of money is the root of all evil into money itself is evil. We turned blessings are poor in spirit into blessed are the financially broke. And that misinterpretation kept more people in bondage than almost any other lie. And I had a conversation with a mentor recently who grew up in a church where wanting to be successful was seen as worldly. Ambition was treated like a character flaw. And the result, an entire congregation of people living paycheck to paycheck, calling it contentment, when it was really just resignation of just being okay. And that's not what God desires. And this is nothing to do with a prosperity gospel or God wants you to be rich, et cetera, et cetera. This is all about being a good steward, stewarding the things that God's given us and actually applying the principles that Proverbs and the Bible lay out for us because God designed it that way. It was designed for kings and rulers, and that's what we are. So here's the hard truth about talents and what nobody wants to hear. God gave you talents not to bury them, but to multiply them. Remember the parable of the talents in Matthew 25? The servant who buried his one talent, who played it safe, who didn't take risks. He was called wicked and lazy. I repeat, wicked and lazy. Not the servants who risked the money and doubled it. They were called good and faithful. And time is your actual treasure here. Ephesians 5:15-16 says, be very careful then how you live, not as unwise, but as wise, making the most of every opportunity because the days are evil. Make the most of every opportunity because the days are evil. You know that means in practical terms, rich people buy time, poor people buy stuff. Ambitious people buy skills. Lazy people buy distractions. And the real inheritance, and I'm not talking about the income brackets here, I'm talking about mindsets. You can make 6 figures and still have a poverty mentality if all you do is trade your money for temporary comfort and entertainment. And there's a reason Solomon, the wealthiest king in biblical history, wrote Ecclesiastes, that everything is meaningless except fearing God and keeping his commandments. He understood something profound. The real inheritance isn't about the gold, it's about the wisdom to create value. And there's an ancient proverb that says, if you have a capable son, you don't need to accumulate wealth. If you have an incapable son, there is no point in accumulating it. And here's the thing, you reap what you sow. And here's where it gets challenging. You're worthy of exactly what you currently have because you've already proven you can achieve it. And that's not condemnation. It's Galatians 6:7. A man reaps what he sows. If you're sowing a minimum effort, you're reaping minimum results. The harvest is always proportional to the seed and the work that you're actually putting in. And the myth of the 7 income streams. Matthew 6:24, no one can serve 2 masters. You cannot serve both God and money. Now, we usually apply this spiritually, But there's a practical application here that most people miss. You cannot serve both God and money. And you cannot serve 7 businesses, 7 different income streams, 7 different goals simultaneously. You need to build them. You need to focus one at a time. And a friend of mine, incredibly ambitious guy, started 9 businesses because he heard that millionaires have 7 income streams. He had agencies, locations, partnerships, all requiring him to be the one closing the deals. And you know what happened? He was spread so thin that none of them worked well. He was serving 9 masters and failing at all of them. And here's the thing. You need to focus. The focus formula is in James 1:8. It calls the opposite being double-minded. It says such a person is unstable in all that they do. And you don't want to be not double-minded. You don't want to be 9-minded, unstable in all 9 things. And because focus isn't mystical. It's mathematical. Focus equals the number of things you're saying no to, because that means you have said yes to the one thing. And Jesus modeled this perfectly because he had one mission: to seek and save the lost. Everything else, even the good things, even helping people, took a back seat to that singular focus. So you want to put your hand to the plow. Luke 9:62 says, no one who puts a hand to the plow and looks back is fit for service in the kingdom of God. You want to know why your business isn't working? You keep on looking back. You keep on second guessing and keep on adding new ventures before finishing the first one that God's already placed in your hands. So put your hand to one plow, look forward, lock in, and don't stop until the field is done. So here's the 100x principle. Mark 4:20 says some seed falls on good soil and produces a crop 30, 60, or even 100 times what was sown. 100 times, not 2 times, not 10% growth, 100 times. And I know see a CEO who grew his company from 200 million valuation to a 1.2 billion in under 2 years. And when I asked what he did differently, his answer was simple but shocking. He attended 66 events per quarter, in person, flying to meet people. He has a wife, kids, and he made a conscious choice about his priorities during that season. Because again, you want to have balance. In wealth, it's about having time freedom. It's about having the money freedom. It's about having your health. But in certain seasons, you're going to want to prioritize one or the other and have a balance with the others. So when you're in a season of building, I hear some people are already thinking it's like, hey, that's not balanced. That's not healthy. What about family time? And you're right to ask that. Those are legitimate questions. But here's what the Bible actually says about seasons. Ecclesiastes 3 tells us that there's a time for everything: a time to plant and a time to harvest, a time to build and a time to rest. And notice, it doesn't say do everything simultaneously. It says there are seasons. In Proverbs 24:27, put your outdoor work in order and get your fields ready. After that, build your house. There's a good order to everything. And here's the trade-offs of reality here. You want to build the business first, then build the house. And the order matters here. And what nobody wants to admit, you cannot make different trades and expect the same results. You can't work 40 hours a week and expect to compete with someone working 80. You can't spend your evenings on entertainment and expect it to match someone spending theirs on education. These aren't judgments. It's just the math. It's just what's going on. And of course, God can enter in and he can open the doors and he can do the supernatural within your life. And it's on us to do what he has placed in our areas of influence, in the talents that he's given us, and in the things that he's given us to steward, and then leave the rest up to him. Leave the open and closing doors up to him. Leave the miraculous to God and put the momentum and what you are doing into your own hands. Because the question isn't whether the trade-off is fair. The question is what you are actually willing to pay of what you want. And what has God actually called you to lay everything down? Because everything has a price tag. You're going to either pay it or you're going to get the shoes. And that's going to be completely different. And always offering this up to God and what he desires of you, because that's where you enter into your purpose. That's where you enter into the places he wants you putting your effort. So what's working as unto the Lord actually means? In Colossians 3:23, it says, whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as working for the Lord, not for human masters. And with all your heart, not some of your heart, not when you feel like it, not when the emotions are right and the stars align. It's with all your heart. And I want you to introduce to something that will test whether you actually believe this work. Try to work 12 hours a day for 30 days straight. No weekends off. Or maybe just take the Sabbath off. And before you close this video, hear me out on this. The biblical precedent for intensity. Jesus worked for 3 years straight. No days off. Clouds followed him constantly. He'd go pray at 4 a.m. after teaching until midnight. He worked until he literally died on the cross and said, "It is finished." And Paul worked as a tent maker while planting churches and writing half the New Testament. He says in 1 Corinthians 15:10, "I worked harder than all of them, yet not I, but the grace of God was with me." So again, be obedient to the Sabbath and see how much intensity you can put in. Try this for 30 days and see after that what you are actually capable of and what God actually calls you to create. And here's a couple little lessons. You're not made of glass. God designed you for more than you think. You can work significantly harder than feels comfortable, and your goals are achievable much faster than you believe. And you don't need the intensity forever, but you do need to know what you're capable of. And there are people working harder than you who are winning, and there are people working less than you who are winning. What matters is, what has God called you to? What are the talents he's placed within you? And how are you stewarding the things that he has given you? Forceful people lay hold. This is a great one, a great principle here. Matthew 11:12 says, "The kingdom of heaven has been forcefully advancing, and forceful people lay hold of it." Forceful, not passive, not waiting for a miracle, forcefully advancing. Now, does this mean work yourself to death? No. Exodus 20 gives us the Sabbath for a reason. But most people aren't in danger of working too much. They're in danger of calling comfort balance and laziness self-care. When in reality, Proverbs 26:16 says, "A sluggard is wiser in his own eyes than 7 people who answer discreetly." The lazy person always has an excuse, always has a justification, always knows better than those who've actually succeeded. You do not want to be that person. You want to be the person that stewards this, that goes to bed tired, that sleeps the sleep that you know you have put in the effort, that you have stewarded the things God's called you to. And here's the final truth. Everything that I've shared today is true. Working hard, being diligent, investing in skills, eliminating distraction, and counting the cost. But none of it matters if you lose your soul in the process. Mark 8:36 says, "What good is it for someone to gain the whole world, yet forfeit their soul?" My friend who crossed 100 million, he'd be the first to tell you that the money means nothing if you lose your family, that if you lose your health, or if you lose your relationship with God. And there are seasons for intense work. Ecclesiastes 3 makes that clear. But there are also seasons for rest, for family, for simply being. The key is knowing which season you're in and being fully present in it, fully focused on it. So work hard, work smart, and work as unto the Lord. But know why you're working, because at the end of life, nobody's going to ask you about your net worth. They're going to ask, what did you build? Who did you serve? And did you finish well? Because at the end of it, God's going to say, "Well done, good and faithful servant." So if you like this video, we actually have a wealth building kingdom community, kingdom business community. You can go ahead and check out the link at the bottom of the video and throw on a like, comment what you want to do. We'd love to come beside you and empower you to achieve the goals that God has placed within your heart.